For decades, India was largely known as one of the world's biggest importers of defense equipment. Today, that story is changing rapidly. From fighter aircraft components and missile systems to drones and aerospace precision engineering, Indian companies are increasingly becoming an integral part of the global aerospace and defense supply chain. The sector is entering a new phase. Companies that spent years developing product and clearing rigorous qualification processes are now moving into large-scale production. Record order books, strong government support for indigenization, rising exports and growing global demand are creating what many industry experts describe as a structural multi-year growth cycle. Global aerospace giants like Airbus and Boeing are also expanding their sourcing from India, while geographical tensions and higher defense spending across the world are opening up new export opportunities for the Indian manufacturers. But can India truly become a global aerospace manufacturing hub? Which companies stand to benefit? What are the opportunities and challenges ahead? You're watching Deep Dive. Today, we decode India's aerospace opportunity and why this sector could be entering its most significant growth phase yet. Joining me now on Deep Dive is Arvind Meligiri, who is the Executive Chairman and CEO of AEQUS Limited. Mr. Meligiri, thank you very much for joining us today. To begin with, the Indian aerospace industry has been growing multifold. In the last 10 years, we have seen the industry graduate from not just being a subsystem manufacturer, but also moving towards system integration. Where do you see the Indian aerospace industry at this point in time?
If you really look at aerospace industry today, where it stands, we are about 2% of the global supply chain. I'm speaking more of a commercial aerospace industry right now,
Yes.
Because that's a larger piece of the, what we're talking global supply chain perspective. And then we can talk a little bit about the defense side also, which is also has aerospace, defense aerospace side of it. We are about 2% of the global supply chain today. And we are going to be, aviation market for aerospace aviation market for about 10% of the global market will be India in coming, in the coming years, coming decade, basically, I would say. So the aspiration for the OEMs to do more out of India, one, obviously, they want to buy where the market is also. The second one is India as a country has a significant value story to deliver to them, especially large engineering base and precision machining background coming out of automotive background, what we had and what we have built ourselves, example, over the last 15 years in understanding aerospace industry and able to understand the, what is required to be, globally competitive capability perspective and building a vertical integrated solutions coming out of India. So these are all becoming like a flywheel effect over last 10 years. These have been slowly, they have been moving and rotating. Now it's a momentum has picked up. And we see that, our ability to absorb much larger work packages as a country is very high. And that basically makes it easier for the OEMs to place large work packages, like tens of billions of dollars a year on a work package, makes a difference, versus what they used to place 1 million, 2 million a year kind of work packages. So the contract of $100 million is not unusual at all anymore in this business today.
So in your opinion, I think the Indian aerospace industry is ready for a multi-year growth cycle. And what are the tailwinds will push for this multi-year growth cycle?
Yeah, if you really look at it, I would say one is the order backlog what OEMs have today. It's over next 10 years, they don't need any new orders, actually. Even if they're building at a much higher level than what historically they have built, still they will no need to get any more orders to fill to 2035. And on top of that, Indian aviation market is also growing significantly, really, if you look at it. Typically, aviation market grows 2 times the GDP. And when GDP grows 8-9%, so aviation market grows like, 2 times of that. That basically are two big tailwinds what we have. And also the customers are focusing on ability to buy more from India, especially if we can get more value out of this. And third is, third element, which basically post-COVID, the Western supply chain has not been able to ramp back up to the levels where OEMs want them to be, just because of lack of engineering talent. And a lot of people during the COVID time retired, and the talent doesn't exist anymore. And then that basically creates a problem for ramping up back to the high volumes, which industry has never delivered in the past. And then the last element is the cost of capital. Cost of capital, West was almost negligible. So whether it's 1%, sometimes it's even minus, right? So suddenly the cost of capital has shown up at 7-8% level, which is in line with what we were facing all along our life in India. So that makes it more competitive also, per se. So I think all these are factors of which are tailwind, I would call, to drive this industry to look at India much more positive sense.
From a market's point of view, have you seen a decisive global sourcing shift towards India, and is it more to do with domestic demand that is coming in, or the export opportunity which is also there for many companies?
No, it's predominantly global requirements. Obviously, India aviation market is growing and obviously higher than anybody else in the world today because of just the GDP growth, what is happening. But our base is very small, so you always grow faster when your base is small as a percentage basis. And it's predominantly the value they see out of India and ecosystem they have developed. I mean, this did not happen overnight. So it has happened over the last 15 years or so. Since 2008-9, we have seen the Airbus and Boeing trying to do more in India, working with suppliers like us to develop capabilities and vertical integration as much as possible, and because they ultimately want to maximum value add happens in this industry. The parts fly across the world to get finished, and if we can somehow bring that together in short space, like what you're seeing in special economic zone, aerospace cluster, we can within 500 meters we can finish the part. So that makes a big difference in terms of in the current initiative sustainability and also logistics nightmare and risks. What we see sometimes in a global geopolitical uncertainties, what we see sometimes, all this gets eliminated. And on top of it, we have a sustainable energy also. India is growing sustainable energy. On top of it, we can deliver literally a green solution to customers. So that's those are all the actual ground realities of what they're leveraging.
If you look at the industry or the Indian capabilities, maybe 10 to 12 years back, it has much to do with smaller part manufacturing and exporting it to the OEMs. Have you, in the last decade or last few years, seen a transition happening to not just being aircraft parts, but also the other aerospace parts, which includes missiles, rocket motors, ammunition, electronic drones, or aerospace subsystems?
I would say predominantly it has been a commercial aerospace side, because as soon as you get into the exports on the military side, it becomes a lot of ITAR, export control issues come into picture. And really parts complexity have grown. And today, if I look at it, literally every material, whether it's aluminum, steel, Inconel, any of the super alloys we're processing, and size of the parts have grown steadily from under 1 meter to up to 4 meter parts. So there is an economics since the economics where a certain point it may not make sense to fly the part out. So we see about 4 meters on an average maximum. Anything more than that would be more not economical to really fly out of the country, produce it here and ship it out for assembly lines. That's how we look at it. So, I mean, over a period of time, we've expanded this, capacity. For example, our surface treatment facility, or whether our machining facility, today goes up to 4 meters, a world-class facility, up to 4 meters automated processing it can do. So, over a period of time, we have extended this capability because surface treatment is absolute necessary in this industry with all sorts of approval, over 90 approvals we have in the surface treatment facility. So that all adds up to bring more and more in, because unless you have approvals, OEM approvals, the systems guys, system integration guys approval, it's very difficult to get more parts out. Ultimately, this industry is about doing more components to create more value.
How is the industry placed from a point of view of design and development, which we used to do and we still do, to now going into production into integrated subsystems, or maybe, as you said, the capability that has accuracy in basically about 4 meter kind of subsystems which you make. how is the capability or the transition which has happened, and does it, in your opinion, scalable in some way for many other companies like you to move into that? And if you can give us a understanding of what it is with respect to basically replacing multiple vendors from Europe or other regions, and and consolidate your position and bring in everything in India.
Well, I think the challenge is obviously we still are a build to print country predominantly. We don't really have, we are moving slowly. Some of the companies are looking at possibly on the defense side, the build to spec kind of a requirement. The commercial aerospace side, I don't think we are there yet, in my view. It's more, maybe even I doubt whether we'll be in a position to do anything in the next single aisle program, which may be coming in 2030, 2035. But it could be there, but we are great in design for customers as a services, and then we are also doing build to print side of it. So yes, do we still have ability to integrate the assemblies in India? Absolutely, because it's still a build to print assembly. And because you will buy the things, components or subsystems, which can be integrated wherever it's done. Today, if you really look at some of assemblies we get parts all over the world, because they're approved, enabled suppliers by customers, or the capability doesn't exist still in the country. So it's a layer by layer, you need to build this. And whether other companies can do it, look, this is a very capex led growth. This industry is, you need to invest capex and wait for all the approvals. Every time you have to scale, your next level of approvals have to come in. So it's a very capex led, and it is a patient capital that needs to be there to build a base of large base. So I think anybody who's willing to wait for that kind of a return on investment, it works. It can work, but they have to be committed to be in the industry. That's a very key here. You have to be married to this industry.
Interestingly, just wanted your thoughts on. We had Tata Advanced Systems unveiling manufacturing of the first C-295 aircraft. That's the first time it's been built or assembled in India. In that sense, how big is that from an aerospace point of view? Is that the beginning of showing the world that we are capable of manufacturing in India as well?
No, I mean, India has been capable of manufacturing aircrafts. India has assembled military aircraft in the past. We have assembled Dornier, we have assembled Tejas. India is capable of doing it. I don't think that's a problem. India, in fact, designed military aircraft. So I don't think that's an issue. Issue comes down to is, do we, doing a commercial aviation is a completely different ballgame. Military, we will end up doing a lot of things, and we have no choice as a self sustaining country. We'll have to do that. But commercial is a different ballgame. It's assembly line can come in, but doesn't mean much value add will happen. So we need to really bring more value add subsystems and everything that needs to happen. For that, it has to be a strategic decision by the government. Where do you want to be in 20, 30 years in aviation? What is India's role in that? And that's very important to be, decided at the highest level of the government along with the industry, and executing their roadmap.
And how do you look at investments coming into aerospace like yourself at AEQUS? What kind of investments are you doing to bring up capabilities, and you're moving towards system integration as well? To assert to some extent, what kind of investments are required by India in that and in this area?
I mean, it goes by different capability, right? If you want to do a very large forging press or something, you might have to do $150 million, wait for 6, 7 years, 8 years, to get a break-even point. It's like all those kind of things exist, and it is important that understanding each of them have a different life cycle, and working to make sure that we layer the investment in such a way that we continue to be able to meet our overall requirement to all the stakeholders. Because once you invest on something like the press, what we invested back in 2011, 10,000 on hydraulic press, I think we put in about $30 million. I think it took 7, 8 years. If it was not COVID, it would have been a little faster. I think it took 10, 12 years to break even this business. So it's not easy decisions. to make it happen. But that trust is going to be there, producing, generating value to the country, to the global supply chain, 100 years from today. That's the beauty, these investments, and there is no way I can, just make a decision based on 2 years, 3 years, some of these things. But we have to make those calls. As entrepreneurs, we make those calls, and we have to stick by it. And investors have to trust in our ability to understand this industry and make the right decisions.
Arvind, thank you very much for joining us on Deep Dive.
You are on top of the world with Times Network. And you're watching ET Now.
In association with Jindal Stainless. In association with the all-new Yono, power to every Indian.
It is happening now. New tomorrows, new challenges. And all of it needs energy to work. Not afraid to imagine big. Because when energy stops taking, when it just gives, people can move. Really move. At this moment, the world's evolving. And so is energy. Suzlon. Good energies that work.
Ease of doing business को बढ़ावा, सिंगल विंडो सिस्टम और डीरेगुलेशन से आकर्षित होते उद्योग, डिफेंस इंडस्ट्रियल कॉरिडोर के अंतर्गत अब तक 197 एमओयू पर हस्ताक्षर। मुख्यमंत्री योगी आदित्यनाथ जी के सक्षम नेतृत्व में उत्तर प्रदेश रक्षा क्षेत्र में देश को स्वावलंबी बनाने के साथ साथ औद्योगिक विकास के नए युग का अग्रदूत बनकर भी उभर रहा है।
आज हम उत्तर प्रदेश के अंदर हर सेक्टर में अच्छा निवेश को यहाँ पर लाने में सफल हुए हैं और उसी का परिणाम है कि डिफेंस मैन्युफैक्चरिंग कॉरिडोर उत्तर प्रदेश के अंदर तेजी के साथ आगे बढ़ता हुआ दिखाई दे रहा है।
स्वदेशी रक्षा विनिर्माण को नई मजबूती देने के लिए उत्तर प्रदेश में डिफेंस इंडस्ट्रियल कॉरिडोर किया जा रहा है विकसित। इसके तहत राज्य के 6 शहरों लखनऊ, कानपुर, अलीगढ़, आगरा, झांसी और चित्रकूट में कुल 6 नोड्स किए जा रहे हैं तैयार।
काफ़ी सारी पॉलिसी का फ़ायदा उठाया है, जिनमें से सब्सिडीज़ हैं ऑन कैपिटल इक्विपमेंट, टैक्स एग्जेम्पशन, ईज़ ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस, इम्प्लीमेंटेशन इन द सर्विसेज के अंदर हमें काफ़ी फ़ायदा हुआ है।
रक्षा उत्पादन और औद्योगिकीकरण के क्षेत्र में निरंतर नई उपलब्धियां हासिल करता उत्तर प्रदेश आज आत्मनिर्भर भारत के संकल्प को साकार करने के साथ देश की आर्थिक प्रगति को भी दे रहा है नई गति।
So how do you look at capital? Because you said that capital is the biggest thing available. How do you look at it?
Available capital is not an issue if you really look at it. I mean, if you look at capital market, it has been very vibrant. Indian capital market has been, and investors have been, my interaction with my investors they have been always been supportive. Make a long-term investment as long as you have clarity. You got to, you know what you're doing. Your clarity, communicate. That's what we went and recently in our investor day we communicated. Where we want to be in 5 years. What do you see? What is the opportunity we see? And how do we execute that? That's what it comes down to. Is the opportunity exists? Absolutely. It's all about execution.
Mr. Meligiri, how are you looking at 5 years from now? AEQUS in that sense, or for the industry, what kind of transition that you are looking at for yourself at AEQUS?
Yeah, we basically guided 4 to 6 times growth, in overall growth for perspective, 4 to 5 times in aerospace industry. So I think we should be able to, we see that opportunity exists in a 5-year out. So, and if you look at our past performance, it directionally gives, and our momentum is pretty good right now, where we see.
How do you look at margins in this industry? Are there enough levers for the margins to grow in this industry from a company's point of view who's investing into aerospace?
Yeah, ultimately, we have to be globally competitive. Customers have options. We are not, although we may be sole source and all that stuff, but we have customers have options. So there is a balance between the margins we want to command and growth we want to achieve. So we want to have a right optimization between the two, right level of ROCs and margins and EBITDA margins and also the growth. Because ultimately, capability building is the number one priority. Once you build capability, it's easier for a customer to put more work here and more work they put, less drag they will have in terms of supply management. That means more efficiency for both of us, right? Ultimately, it's a two OEM driven business as of today, and the aerospace aerostructure side of it. And obviously, there are a few OEMs on the engine side of it. So it's a that's how it comes down to building a scale. Each customer is a key here.
One of the biggest challenges that the industry has been seeing is with respect to supply chain. We saw that happening after the COVID as well, and we are now seeing in the last 12 to 18 months as well, as a result of various geopolitical events that has happened. How does a company like you look at supply chain, and how does how do you ensure your supply chain are perfect?
I mean, we have to be agile. That's the only thing I can tell in aerospace industry. I have seen, my last, my 20, 25 years in this industry, I have seen all sorts of disruptions. 9/11 happened, market went down. Then we had all sorts of, the Ukraine war, in recent times. And we had all titanium evaporating completely in the system, rebuilding the whole supply chain of titanium for our OEMs. And then, recent West Asia war issue, what we had, the supply chain delays happened. And then we have Red Sea issues, all this, all sorts of things we have seen. And so it's being agile and having ability to manage the priorities of customers to make sure that what is required for their assembly line is delivered on a day in and day out is the only way we can sustain. I mean, we airlift most of our parts when we finish, So it's important that we understand different logistics routes and what it is, and that's the one key element of this business: the ability to understand supply chain management, which has to be agile, very agile.
Mr. Meligiri, have you looked at indigenization of the supply chain to reduce risk, or we are still import dependent from the supply chain point of view?
I mean, this was my stated objective back in 2008. We said we took a 20-year view, actually 40-year view to develop this cluster, and a 20-year view, 15, 20-year view of how do you get 100% in-country value add. Over the period of time, if you really look at the aircraft wheels today, we do about 10% of the aircraft wheels done in Belgavi. And in our cluster, where we forge, machine, surface treat, and we have internally within India, we have integrated the raw material of aluminum also. By doing this, we have gone there, and that's the ultimate value. And this is just one material and one type of component. There are hundreds and hundreds of, we ourselves buy more than 1,200 different material specs. So it's a journey, what I can call. I cannot fulfill everything, but as an industry, we all have to be doing. I mean, even qualifications of surface treatments, we have over 90 qualifications. I mean, each one takes effort and time, and not only just qualifying, but also maintaining on a year in and year out. So it's an effort from the customers, it's an effort from us to do this. And it's a journey, what I can call, nothing more than that. It keeps happening. We continue to do literally every day. We look at vertical integration. How do we do vertical integration? How do we increase the in-country value add? And that job continues to happen.
Give us a sense of how you manage the current crisis, especially the West Asia one, which has disrupted supply chain from the logistics point of view, from sourcing of material point of view, and how challenging it has been, and what kind of changes that you have undertaken along with partnership with your OEMs as well.
Yeah, if you look at, I think earlier, I communicated about this in the past also. It impacted about 4 to 5 weeks of delays, has created in terms of incoming material for us, what we have seen. And our preparation for a quarter typically is it increase our working capital. Obviously, gone up by 30 days to 120 to 150 days or something in the last quarter. So I think it has impacted, and logistics from by air has gone up by 5-6 days. So it has been factored in, and I think it's coming to almost. It takes almost 3 to 4 months to come to normalcy after everything stops. That's the whole problem, right? So in the interim, we just have to buy and plan for longer 3 to 4 months additional. 3 to 4 months of planning will do in terms of raw material to be around, and we just need to be careful about it. Do we need, adding about 4 to 5 weeks is what we have seen, helping us to make ultimately we have no choice but to deliver to our customer commitments. If you have to bring by air, we are bringing by air some.
Arvind, you've been a veteran and you've seen the industry very closely. What is your assessment of the Indian aerospace ecosystem from maybe an SME or an MSME to high-end company which like you has been looking at subsystems and integrating subsystems? Is the industry matured enough, or it has more room or runway before it reaches a maturity stage?
I mean, our sub-tier growth has to continue. Today about I would say 13-14 suppliers we use as subcontractors, despite our capacity being there, and we intend to increase that. And because ultimately a tier structure is each of us have to be focused on certain capabilities, and we have to be strong in it to be competitive globally. And we have to develop supply chain. Well, just the ecosystem what we developed in Belgavi for whether cutting tool suppliers, whether it's fixture suppliers, whether raw material suppliers, being in and around within the zone makes a huge difference. And our job has been from day one is to how do I develop, how do I bring more people into this, how do we not duplicate the capital, because ultimately, cost of capital is high. So we have to make sure our capital is fully utilized. And that's the key driver for this vertical integration more than anything else.
Arvind, thank you very much for joining us on Deep Dive. That was Arvind Meligiri, Executive Chairman and CEO of AEQUS, talking to us about the Indian aerospace industry. Thank you for watching Deep Dive.